Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. And welcome to episode 11 of Think Out Loud, all in the Think Out Loud playlist. And this week we will be looking at something that you sent in. Someone anonymously sent in a request for me to show how I would plan research for a particular thing. So we'll look at that in a moment. But first, some of our usual things. As always, thank you to the people who are supporting the channel financially, which is completely optional, but always appreciated. That money is reinvested in all the software and things that I buy, and sometimes in delicious chocolate chips. So thank you so much for that. Always, always appreciated. Same for super chats and super stickers if you're here on YouTube. I am still setting up some of my screens. Let's see. Okay, working. So just a reminder to subscribe here on YouTube and of course let other people know about the show. So let's take a look at what came in and then we'll all work on it together and see what we can do for the anonymous person who sent it in. So let's switch screens. This button should do it. Yep. Okay, so here's me and the optional tip jar and the chat room where there's nobody so far, I guess. And hopefully I'm live and my screen. Yes. Okay, so let's take a look at what someone sent in. This is what it said. Hey, Rebecca. This says, this is a system or an app or we don't really know what for family members who are primarily the caregivers for people with dementia and memory issues. Hi, Mix Betty. So what's the problem or pain point? Many caregivers feel guilty if they spend time on themselves rather than their ill or elderly loved ones. Caregivers who are burned out may experience fatigue, stress, anxiety, and depression. And there was a link to, I guess, an article about that. Many caregivers expect their involvement to have a positive effect on the health and happiness of the patient, but this may be unrealistic for patients suffering from a progressive disease such as Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. Or as I remember from when my grandmother was dealing with dementia towards the ends of her life. Hi, Melanie. I don't think she had a sense that people were taking care of her. So like, it wasn't like she was grateful or amazed. She was always confused. She didn't understand who people were or where she was. And so there was a lot of effort being put into her care that she didn't even understand. And did it have a positive effect on her? You know, so hard to know. What does that look like? So, and then finally, the person also said that the caregivers need emotional support. Since the caregivers are taking care of family members with dementia could be exhausting. At times, they're looking for support groups and taking care of their mental health. And the question was, this isn't a design one today. This question was, how would I plan the research for this? So that's interesting. So it's also a great time for us to talk about something that I get asked a lot that we haven't really talked about much here, which is, what if we don't have a product to build? What if we just want to research an audience or a topic or an area to see, should we build something? What should we build? What might it be? Now, this is where generative research can really highlight pain points, unmet needs, all the things Larry talks about: tools, knowledge, workarounds, issues, obstacles, concerns, blockers. Certainly the famous 4 horsemen of bad UX, my registered trademark: frustration, confusion, disappointment, and distraction. And by learning these things, and then of course prioritizing what we find, then we can see if there's something that we could build. I actually did a project a little bit close to this in 2014, I think it was. A Parkinson's Foundation hired my company to interview some people who had Parkinson's and to learn how they use fitness wearables and if they share their disease progress on social media or if they tend to be private about it. And that was just that was it, because their question was, Should we build something? And if we did, what would it be? What do these people need? So very often I hear from startup people like, oh, we have to start with an idea. We have to build something. We can't start with nothing. And they also think that you can't research when you don't have an idea of what to build. And to me, that is the best time to research. So let's imagine that whoever sent this in, we don't even know what we should build for these people or if we should build something. Now, if you want to see this file later, remember that it is, oops, I have accidentally dragged whatever I had there right off the screen. That was strange. You can find it on the web. It'll be 9RF as in Frank, M as in Mary, 66.axchair.com. And so I seem to have lost my headline. I don't know how, but I'll just copy and paste this one. So basically that is what we are working on today. This is project details and assumptions. Now, I don't have too many assumptions here because the idea would be that we're doing generative research to learn who are these caregivers and what do they need. Now, as I go, if you are watching live, please ask your questions. Please post your thoughts, post your ideas, post questions. If you're watching later, please put comments in the YouTube comments. I answer all of them personally, or at least I do check them out. So let's take a look. So if we are going to research for this particular issue, where are we going to start? So first of all, here's an example. Let's imagine that we don't have personas and we don't have a marketing team who has a target audience. We're just looking for these types of caregivers. Well, we might want to narrow this down by starting with a geographic region. We might say we want to meet caregivers in India. We want to meet caregivers in Germany. We want to meet caregivers in America. So let's assume that that's what we're looking for. So let's start. I'm going to start today with our participant profile. So let's assume that we are looking for caregivers in a certain region. And so again, we'll assume that that is a country or a part of a country. So let's say it's a country. Obviously, we want to split this between different genders. We don't just want to meet a lot of women who are taking care of people. We want to meet all kinds of people who are taking care of people. And it might even be people of different ages. We sometimes think that someone who's taking care of a relative with Parkinson's, they assume the relative is old and that the person taking care of them is kind of old themselves. So let's say varied genders and ages. Let's also remember that some of the people we meet might have their own accessibility needs or their own diagnoses or conditions. So we have to remember that we should be meeting with those people as well. Sometimes the person trying to take care of someone else has their own issues. Melanie says, most of my research don't usually result in a product or MVP. What would be a good impact to close out the research? Yeah, that's where we're going to need to close out the research with insights and opportunities. What does this audience seem to need, or what are their unmet needs or pain points where we might be able to build or improve something for them? Usually the assumption is like, oh, these people just need an app where they can find people like them and get support. But I always feel like there's something much, much deeper going on that makes that sound very surface to me. Maya, hi, Maya, I'm going to be talking to you soon. I did 3 years of research and design for people with memory disease, and we have our final material here. Unfortunately, it's only in Finnish, but reference list on the end of the book has many English references. Okay, and she's pasted something here. So, but it's only in Finnish, so I can't look at it. It's not going to help me very much. So let's say we want to meet varied people, and let's say, we're not too sure who the target audience necessarily is because we don't have any ideas in mind yet, which is fine. But let's make sure that we do want to meet a broad group of people. So I would probably say at least 30. I don't want to just meet 10 people or 12. Even 20 could be okay. Maybe let's say at least 20, because you can always start with, say, 20 people And then if you find, you know what, I'm hearing the same thing over and over, all these people have very similar needs, then okay, maybe you've gotten the information you need. But if you find that you keep saying, wow, all these people are so different, their needs are so different, their pain points are different, their processes are different, their tasks are different, then we should probably meet some extra people until we're hearing, we're finding those patterns. Remember, we're looking for those patterns and themes. So I would say start with 20, maybe possibly more, especially if we want to get a varied group with different genders and ages represented. Yeah, I'm going to go back to 30. I think once I think about genders and ages and maybe some people with their own accessibility needs, who knows, maybe someone dealing with cancer is helping someone who's dealing with dementia. So they're going to have their own issues, which we should learn about and take into consideration. Now, this is probably not necessarily observational. We're probably not going to watch people taking care of people. So this is probably just going to be in-depth interviews. I'd probably say 60 minutes. I can see us covering a lot of topics. This is copy paste from our travel. And what are we going to end up with? Well, we'll have the recordings of the videos. Remember, this is fake. This is hypothetical. We might have typologies or personas, but sometimes we don't. We would have a presentation with insights and opportunities and suggestions. There's a part in English. Maya, do I need to look at that for this, or should I just keep going with this? And I don't know if you're the person who sent this in, because everybody sends these in anonymously, so I don't even know. Okay, so let's think about our research goals. What do we want to learn about these caretakers? So, and then remember, we'll think about some good specific questions, but first we need our general goals, because our general goals will help guide us when we're thinking about questions. Larry says you might group people into user types by the problem they're trying to solve, not necessarily how they actually solve it, which may be very different. Yeah, that's true. And I think we might also find that, very often when someone is a caretaker to someone, the person they're taking care of doesn't have just one condition. Sometimes they have multiple conditions, or conditions that exacerbate each other, or a disease that tends to affect different things. Like dementia is mostly memory. Parkinson's can be a whole bunch of things. It can be memory, balance, movement, certainly cognition. And so I think we're going to see, I think it's not just going to be one thing. But it sounds like from the way this was sent in, so maybe we should go back to this for a moment. It sounds like they're only thinking about people dealing with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Now, that could hypothetically narrow down our participant profile. So maybe it's caregivers in a certain region or country, caring for a relative or close friend with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. I'm going to spell this wrong. Somebody help me here. Is there an H in that? Alzheimer's. I feel like there should be an H in there. Yes, Alzheimer's. Okay. Or dementia. That way we can narrow this down. We want to meet people who are taking care of people with these three things. If you're taking care of a friend with cancer, this wouldn't count. If you're taking care of a friend with depression, this wouldn't count. So we would just be using a screener survey to find these people. Maya says, it's not necessary for this, but maybe some background material for someone else interested in the topic. Okay, thanks. I will copy and paste these into YouTube so that people can see what Maya was posting on LinkedIn. Let's try that. Okay. So now it's everywhere. Thank you. Alrighty. So let's think about what are some of our research goals. So we definitely want to learn about some of their day-to-day experiences. So like, what are they doing all day? Are they taking people to appointments? Are they giving them medications? So we can think about that. Do they have to monitor blood pressure, glucose, other things? So what are some of their day-to-day experiences as a caretaker? We do, and now remember, these aren't the questions we're going to ask. These are just our research goals. We want to make sure we learn these things. So it's okay to write them in some internal lingo for ourselves because they're not the questions we're going to ask people. So I would want to learn, again, thinking about Larry, and Larry is here. I would want to learn if they have any tools that they use as part of that caretaking. So tools used as part of caretaking. So what could that be? Maybe they're using other apps. It could also be methods of support. They might be in Facebook groups for caretakers of relatives with dementia. So what are some tools they use in their caretaking efforts? What are some of the ways they get personal emotional support now? We also learned that from the original details and assumptions that we want to find out about, are they exhausted? Are they looking for support groups? And how do they take care of their own mental health? So we'll learn a little bit about how they get support. We definitely want to learn about self-care, methods and time taken. Are they able to take time every day? Are they taking time every other day? Are they taking time once a week? I think another thing we're going to want to learn, and again, these goals aren't particularly in any order, so I could always reorder them later if I think that there's an order to them, but I want to know if anyone is helping them with the caretaking. Sometimes two siblings are taking care of mom. Does this person get a break? Is there some other caretaker? So is the caretaking shared with other family or friends? And this is definitely close to my heart as well. I should mention I am not a professional in any way related to mental health research. I am not qualified to make judgments about anybody's mental health. I'm not even sure I feel qualified to ask about someone's mental health because I am not, trained in that. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a psychologist. But I certainly feel for what this is about since my adopted mom is back in America. I'm in Italy. She has memory problems and I'm not there to help her. And so a family friend has basically been taking care of her for quite some time. And that's tough that I can't be there to help. So is the caretaking shared with other family or friends? What else can you think of? So not exact questions, but what are some other goals that are going to help us later on map this out, whether it's some sort of task analysis or journey map, or be able to list some of the issues and pain points and unmet needs for these people? What can anybody live in the chat think about some other things? Maybe the expectations of what their help means to that person. And I guess I wonder, I don't know if this is getting too out there, but like how, it says here that it's sometimes unrealistic for them to feel or know that they're helping the patient. So maybe the question is, how do they know they're helping the patient? Or maybe help me out here. How do they feel a sense of reward even if the patient is not appreciative? Maybe now I'm getting a little bit into some specific questions, but is their help understood or acknowledged or appreciated, and how do they feel about that? Since a lot of this seems to be about feelings. A lot of the studies I tend to do are more about tasks and actions, and they're not as much about what people are feeling and what they do in response to those feelings. So but we might want to ask something like that, since this does seem to be a lot about the caretaker's mental health. So feeling a sense of reward or feeling that this is thankless could play into their mental health. So feeling a sense of reward or thanklessness, like from their patient. and how that makes the caretaker feel. Nope, I need more room. What else? What else can anybody think of for either the goals or even some specific questions we might want to ask people? Because today's show is just the research. We are not designing anything. The person who sent this one in only asked for research and how I would plan it. So, hold on, give me a second. Okay, just seeing a message coming in. And nobody's writing in the chat room. So I think my question is, am I still on the air? Yes. Okay, so either nobody has any ideas or I am not on the air. What does success look like to the caregiver? Right. So that is another good question. So we'll add that. Yeah, so let's look back at what we were sent in. So caregivers feel guilty if they spend time on themselves rather than on their ill or elderly loved ones. They're burned out. They experience fatigue, stress, anxiety, and depression. So we put down self-care methods and the time they're putting into their self-care. We put down, do they have any support or support groups or support systems, etc. Let's see, what else? Members with dementia can be exhausting, looking for support groups and taking care of their mental health. The goals may unclear until you've done some initial research. Yeah, and again, the goals would be clearer if I were talking to a client and we could ask them some follow-up questions. But since these come in automatically from you through our system, and I'll put that link up if anybody wants to send things for the future, just go to deltacx.com/links and you can check it out. And there's some links there related to the show, such as how do I send something in for the Think Out Loud series, which could either be planning research, doing a little bit of design, or both, with the idea of being thinking out loud so that you can learn more about the thought process that goes into this. So, yeah, I might normally have some more follow-up questions for whoever this client is to try to see what they are expecting to get out of this. Just like when we worked with the Parkinson's Foundation, we knew that they were wondering, should they be creating some sort of app or tool or system for people with Parkinson's related to their fitness wearables. And what we ended up finding in our research was that for the most part, Parkinson's, the patients they sent us, did use fitness wearables. Not all of them, many of them. And that when we tried to kind of get at how this could be improved and some of what they would prefer that fitness wearables did, they had this dream of stuff that maybe is possible now, but wasn't really possible in 2004. They kind of had this dream that there was going to be a system constantly monitoring all of their Parkinson's symptoms, noticing small changes, alerting their doctor, alerting them. Maybe with some of the technology that's in some of the smartwatches, some of that's a little bit more possible now, but that was a faraway dream in 2014, so nothing got built. Abby says, it's too late in the night, lots of fatigue, I'm just listening. Okay, thanks. Banana says, what about outside stressors on the caretaker? And Alessia says, how about financial concerns linked to caregiving? Okay, these are good. Okay, so that's a good question. Let's put that under the goals because I think that makes some sense. Let's take a look at these two. So let's see, financial concerns related to the caretaking or caregiving and outside stressors. So I guess like what else is going on in this person's life. So let's see, like, I'm trying to think of the way to write it down, but like, do they have a job? Are they also raising children? Are there other things that they're involved in? Like, what else is part of their life? What other work, children, stressors, etc. is part of their life? Yeah, that's a good one. Thanks. Thanks for those. Maybe some people are just catching up. They're here a little bit late, and that is fine. We welcome that. Let me publish this up to the cloud in case anybody is trying to get to it. Axure doesn't update it until I publish it, so there it goes. And what about some specific questions that we might ask in our interviews? Oh, how does being a caregiver affect your work or social life? Okay, that could be what other work, how caregiving affects work, social life, etc. Something else. So let's think about maybe some questions. But again, if you come up with more goals, we'll add them on. So what are some good questions? I'm going to move this up so it's easier for me to see. All right. So, okay, so let's try to write some questions related. So now what you do, because this is Think Out Loud, is we take a look at our goals and we try to turn the goals into questions. But you remember, you have to have that UX hat on. You don't want to ask anything that is leading. You don't want to ask anything that already, that doesn't matter, How many times a day do you check Facebook? I find sometimes people ask questions and I go, why? How does that relate to your goals? So let's come up with some questions. Let's make sure they relate back to our goals and that these are some things we can ask people that are going to get us closer to understanding their day-to-day, their tasks, their realities, their tools, workarounds, their mental state, what they're doing about that mental state, and things like that. I also realized that is the caretaking shared with family or friends? And I just realized it could also be paid aides. Is it aides spelled like that? I can't remember. Like helpers, paid helpers or visiting nurse services. So I'll write helpers because I don't think I spelled aides correctly. So let's start with maybe let's start by asking the person some questions about themselves. So maybe we ask them, now we might know their age from the screener survey. So I usually don't ask people their age again unless I think they lied on the screener survey, which has only happened once, where a woman who looked easily 20 years older than I was had put on the screener survey that she was 2 years younger than I was. And then I was like, I'm missing some information here. Can I ask your age again? And she still maintained that she was younger than I was. So either lying or has had a tough life. Wow. Leor says, question for caregiver. How did you end up being the caregiver and how does it affect the dynamics in the family? Okay, this is starting to get interesting. Now remember, we don't want to ask questions just because they're interesting, because there's always interesting questions to ask. We want to make sure that these are going to help us learn more about our goals. So let's start breaking the ice by asking these people some questions about themselves. Because I think if I jump right in with like, how long have you been taking care of, who are you taking care of and how long? I wonder if I don't want to dehumanize the person I'm talking to. I want to get to know them too before we talk about the person they're taking care of and before we talk about their own struggles. So let's see. Maybe I can ask them what kind of work they do and if they are working full time. Because this helps us know what else is going on in their life. Maybe is this job stressful or something like that? We might also ask more about their family structure. Who do you live with? So maybe a sense of if they're still taking care of or raising children. Let's see, what else? Okay, Leor had that question. It's not a bad question, but I'd probably ask it a little bit later. So eventually we're going to ask, tell me about the relative or family friend who you are taking care of. So of course, we want to learn this person's conditions, how much the condition has progressed. And I'm putting these in parentheses because they'll remind me while I'm interviewing that if this person doesn't volunteer this information, I will ask a follow-up question. So if I say, who do you live with? And they go, oh yeah, it's me and my husband and a dog and 2 kids. And I might say, oh, how old are your kids? Oh, they're 20 and 21. Oh, okay. So, how are you, how involved are you in their lives? Oh, they're pretty independent. No, I have to really help them a lot. So, if people don't volunteer stuff, the stuff in parentheses is kind of my reminder to ask the follow-up question if they're not giving me enough information. So if I say, tell me about the relative or family you're taking care of, and they say, oh, grandma got diagnosed with this 2 years ago, but wow, it's really progressed fast and now she's this. Okay, I don't have to ask some of these follow-up questions because this person is volunteering the information I was going to ask. So maybe we have a separate question asking about maybe some of that. So actually, maybe we go with Lior's question. So let's say, do you share the caretaking with other friends, family, or hired helpers? And then if not, how did you become the sole caretaker? So that will address what Lior said. Did it affect relations or dynamics in the family? That sounds so sensitive, I know that we're going to be asking people some very sensitive questions, and this is where I feel a little out of my league because I usually don't do research where we ask people such personal questions. I almost feel like you need a qualified psychologist to be able to handle this correctly and delicately. Like, no offense, but I'm not sure I would do this, and I'm not sure I want like a UX newbie doing this. This seems really sensitive. Larry, if you're still here, what's your impression of this? When we're getting into questions that are about health and mental health and family dynamics, are you comfortable asking those things, or do you feel like, well, you do have a degree in psychology, so maybe you're more qualified than I am, but do you feel like it really takes someone with psychology qualifications should be asking these? Maybe it should be left to those people because of the sensitive nature of the topic. Let's also remember, let's make a note here. I'm just going to make a note here under methods. I'm going to write Hipaa Compliance. That's an American thing. I think I spelled it wrong. Someone tell me if I didn't. But basically, there are laws in America about the recording and archiving of records that might have to do with medical situations, mental health situations. There's a lot of laws and regulations around how this information is kept and stored and shared and all of that. And I think that this study might fall into that because someone is going to be divulging personal information about medical conditions or maybe mental health conditions. And so we do have to make sure that this is being cared for in a special way. Lior says, maybe we'll consider working with a mental health professional preparing and conducting the interviews. Maybe, again, I think this is not the kind of thing that can be done easily alone. And I don't recommend something this deep for someone who is still learning UX. Yay, I spelled Hipaa correctly. Thank you, Banana. Larry says, ask sensitive questions with respect. Instead of making it a bunch of questions, make it more like a conversation. Yeah, that is definitely a great style in this case, because we're not going to watch people do a task. We're not going to say, share your screen and log into this e-commerce site. We're going to be having a conversation with people. So think of this as a semi-structured or not too structured interview. We're just going to create some questions that move the conversation towards some of our goals if the conversation isn't naturally moving there. Maya says, yes, it's essential to work together with mental health and or memory care professionals. That's right. So sometimes when people who are doing boot camps or schools or working on their portfolios say to me, like, I'm really passionate about mental health, I think I'm going to do a mental health project for my portfolio. And I say, I don't think you should. This is a lot deeper and more serious and has privacy issues that you're just too new to. And Larry says, let them know it's okay not to answer and don't pry. That's right. Remember, usually in a script, we start out by introducing ourselves and introducing the research. And we always say, you can stop this at any time. You can take a break if you need to. You don't have to answer any particular questions. And if you push with if there's something I ask you that you're not comfortable talking about, just let me know you don't want to talk about that and we'll move on. So, Larry is also right there that should be in that opening introduction script, and probably also our consent form to make sure they signed something that says they are aware that this is the policy. Larry says another method is to ask them to describe it as if it were a friend caregiving for their own parent. Do you mean like to take it out of themselves and say, imagine your friend is taking care of their mom's dementia? I don't know. I don't usually use that style. I would rather people tell me about what they're doing rather than pretend they're imagining it for someone else. Because maybe they're in a support group and they hear a lot from other people and they will describe someone else. And I just want to know their experiences. Yeah, so I see the technique there, but that's probably not what I would do. But again, if that's something a mental health professional recommends, I defer to that person. So let's see what else we can ask them. And like Larry said, this is a conversation. They shouldn't feel like this is a survey. They should feel like it's a conversation. You're going to have to practice a good sympathetic face, a good sympathetic tone of voice. They might be telling you some very difficult things and you're going to have to hold it together. Those of us with #empathy know that sometimes people in interviews tell us difficult things and we feel very affected by that. So you're going to have to hold it together and just find caring but neutral things to say, hey, and then dad died and then it was just me. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your father. I try to say something that acknowledges it without being too pushy. So let's see. What kind of work do you do? Are you working full time? Is the job stressful? I'm going to put that in parentheses because I just realized we only need those if they happen to not mention them and they are working, because it is quite possible that maybe they are not working. Who do you live with? Are they taking care of the children? Also, who do you live with? Are they living with the relative? Are they living with the relative friend who needs care? So that's another good follow-up question. If they don't mention, like, yeah, I'm taking care of my mom and she lives with us. Okay, I don't have to ask that. Tell me about the relative or family friend who you are taking care of. So conditions, how much the condition has progressed. Hopefully they'll tell us how they're related to that person or how they know them. Do you share the caretaking with other friends, family, or hired helpers? If not, how did you become the sole caretaker? Okay, I think we're getting somewhere here. Looking pretty good. Press save. Okay, we need to find a sensitive way to ask them a little about how they take care of themselves. Well, let's start with, how do they get support? Are you part of any support groups or online communities for caretakers? And again, I'd probably need a mental health professional or a psychologist to clean up that question and put it more in the terms that the caretaker would use for themselves, but I'm not familiar with those. So that's another good way to partner with that professional. Banana says, maybe it would be important to ask if they suddenly had to take on this role. I guess the question is, when isn't it sudden? But we could add that. Are you part of any support groups or online communities for caretakers? Let's see. And I know we also want to try to find a way to find out how this person is taking care of themselves. Do you think it's fair? Again, this isn't my specialty, so I am floundering a little bit here, but these are the questions I would be asking of someone who knows more about this than I do, because this is Think Out Loud. What about if I were able to ask a mental health professional, is it fair to ask how the caretaker would describe their state of mind on most days? Like, on most days when you're taking care of Aunt Edna, Edna, is it fair to say, what is your state of mind? Or what? I don't want to, I so rarely deal in feelings in my research that I am not used to this. Maybe we can circle back to that. Let's take a look at some of the other goals that we had and see if we can turn them into questions. So when I get stuck, I don't let myself stay stuck too long. I just move on, knowing that I'll come back to it. I know that if I just think and think and think and think, it's probably not gonna kind of hit me right away. So I'll just say, let me move away from that. Let's look at something else. Maybe we sneak in the question we saw earlier. What does success can you describe some experiences taking care of person's name that felt successful or rewarding? So maybe that gets at some of the positives and what they consider to be success and when things feel rewarding. Maya says, does the person with dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's have a social life or something reasonable to do weekly or daily? That's often pretty important for the caregiver also. Okay, that sounds good. Let's see. I'll just put name, we'll imagine it's Aunt Edna. Does Aunt Edna have friends or social time she spends with others? Because maybe Aunt Edna does have a social life, but maybe the caretaker is going to that too. Or maybe the caretaker, oh no, I just have to drive her there and then I pick her up later. I think we'll learn about that. That was another thing I wanted to ask about. What are some of your key responsibilities in taking care of person's name? So this might be driving them around, giving medications, checking glucose or Glucose, blood pressure. I'll just call it metrics, you know, other vital signs or numbers. Let's see. Are you part of any support groups or online communities for caretakers? Maybe we sneak in a question about some of the stress and the negative stuff so that we can lead to, are you getting support? So, is taking care of name stressful? Now you might say, of course it is, Deb. Just ask them, how is it stressful? Well, asking how is it stressful assumes it's stressful. Who knows? Maybe this person finds it rewarding. Maybe it's still in its early stages and it's not that bad yet. So let's not assume it. Let's ask, is it taking care of them stressful? And if they don't start talking about how, let's ask them how. Banana says, it might be important to ask the relationship between the caretaker and relative has changed emotionally. That could influence their feelings. Okay. How about that? Has taking care of name changed your relationship with them? I remember when my uncle, who I hope is going to be a guest on the show next month, was taking care of his mother, my grandmother, and my uncle, and my grandmother had dementia, and she was living with him and my aunt, and my uncle was saying to me, you know, my mother is being more affectionate with me than she ever was. My mother is hugging me. And I always thought of my mother as kind of a cold person. And then when I had some alone time with my grandmother was telling me, and again, she had advanced dementia. She said, I'm living here with this very handsome man, and he keeps telling me that he loves me. So I think he's my husband. And I had to call up my uncle and say, uh-oh, bad news here. Your mom thinks she's your husband, and maybe that's why she's huggy. Bad news. Awkward. So, yeah, you know, my uncle thought their relationship was changing. He thought they were getting closer, but it turned out she was just confused about who he was. He was a handsome man who tells her he loves her. So, we can try, you know, we can ask some of these questions and see what that person's perceptions are about if those relationships have changed. Are you part of support groups? I think another question would be, how has taking care of name changed your, I don't say, changed your life? Is that too big a question? Like, it might have changed their work. It might have changed their social life. Your work, social life, or other aspects of your life. I know that question just got really big really fast. I would probably want to check with my teammates or my psychologist or mental health professional and if there's maybe a gentler way to ask that question and maybe ease into the sub aspects of it. So let's see. And again, we only have about 5 or 10 more minutes, so we're just going to do the best that we can for the person who sent this in. I don't think this is a 6-week research plan. I would probably put this at 4. And so let's pretend it's $30,000 plus incentives for the people who are going to tell us their life story. We talked about rewarding. We didn't talk about self-care. So we talked about, are they part of support groups? How often do you get a break from taking care of Aunt Edna? And what do you do to take a break? Again, I'm going to need to reword these questions. These are definitely not final. This is definitely an early draft. So again, this ties back to the goal of where was it? Self-care methods and time taken. We talked about methods of getting support. So maybe let's reorder these a little bit and ask if they're part of support groups. Maybe ask if they are you working with a therapist, life coach, or other person who gives you support? Again, these are extremely personal questions, and I think they should only be asked by appropriate research professionals who probably are trained in conducting these types of conversations that will include mental and physical health issues. I don't think I'd be comfortable talking about this. If you ask, you should ask what they did before they took on this role. If they weren't doing self-care before, then that might not matter here, right? Okay, that's interesting. Maybe you're saying maybe their approach to self-care has changed because of time or location or something like that. So, what do you do? We could try, I mean, many people know the phrase self-care, so we could try, what do you do for self-care, hobbies, or relaxation? Have any of these changed since you started caring for Aunt Edna? Maybe that's what you're asking, Banana? Like, what are you doing now, and what do you used to do? Because we might learn that there's something that they miss. Like, oh yeah, I used to go on 3 vacations a year, but I can't go now because Aunt Edna has to go to the doctor every week. Let's look back at our goals. Remember, if you're not sure about your questions, look back at your goals and ask yourself, do I have the questions that will answer the goals and give us the information we need for whatever we're trying to prioritize or plan or suggest or look for? Now, normally in these types of interviews, we usually ask like, how can this be improved? But we're dealing with a sensitive topic of a human caring for another human. I'm not too sure I want to say, how can this be improved? But maybe I could ask, and again, this is a draft question. It can probably be improved. What kinds of help or support do you wish you had? Because it seems like ultimately we're trying to learn how people get support, if that support and self-care is enough, or what types of support or self-care they wish they had. And then I don't know if it's an appropriate question or not, but like I wish I could find out what blocks them from getting the help or support they wish they had. Is it time? Is it money? Is it, I don't know the right people? I don't know if it's a good question to ask. I'm going to write it down because this would be my first draft and then it would get better. But what's blocking the help or support you wish you had? So again, this could be time. Oh, where did my cursor go? Time, money, distance. Let's see, time. Let's see, what else? Time, money, distance, gas prices. Larry says, if you had a robot that could do one thing, what would you want it to do for you? Yeah, that's a fun question too. That's a little bit like the magic wand question. You know, if you had a magic wand and could make any improvement or change here, what would you create? So that's, we could go with magic wand or robot. I think that's a good one. Let's try what Larry said. Gas prices. Yeah. If you had a robot that could help you, that if you had a helpful robot, what would you want it to do? Let's try that. Well, we're just about out of time, but I hope the person who sent this in feels like we've gotten some good ideas here for a first draft at some sort of research. This, of course, again, I can't say enough, is a delicate topic and should not be done without working with a mental health professional, possibly a psychologist. I would say don't take this on yourself. Sophie says, hey, Debbie, super interesting. Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing the best I can, though I'm a little bit out of my league. You know, I'm usually dealing in products and services and e-commerce and SaaS and, and two-sided marketplaces. And so to go here is a little bit tough for me because I'm usually not talking to people about feelings and what they do about their feelings. It's usually business as usual. So this is not my strength, but that just means I've got room for improvement. So this would be my first draft, but I would definitely want to collaborate with someone who has experience in this, and again, probably a mental health professional who can make sure I'm asking questions in correct, sensitive ways, or who might even end up conducting the research to know when to probe and when to back off. So yeah, I'm going to go back to a giant picture of me and say, there you go. I think that's episode 11 for Think Out Loud. And please do subscribe here on the YouTube channel. And if you are interested in what we do here, please find 3 people. I bet you have 3 colleagues or your manager or somebody who would love to know more about CX and UX and especially how we do it. And won't you please recommend the channel to them? And subscribe. And any questions you might have about the show, probably answered on this page, deltacx.com/links. It's how to get involved in all kinds of different things, how to send something in for Think Out Loud, what's our calendar of events, what shows are coming up. It's all there. So there you go. Numair says, hi, Deb. Shouldn't we ask about the interviewee's own health condition before asking the rest? The interviewee might be going through certain conditions that might affect our research, and it's a delicate topic. Totally agree. Let me add that quickly just as a note. What kind of work do you do? Who do you live with? Do you have any health conditions or diagnoses? So I've added that to the list. You can't see it right now, but I did add it. And of course, it would be a reminder to myself to double check that question, write something better around it, but good one. Thanks, Rebecca. Any questions from anybody? I've just uploaded it to Axure. So again, if you want to see it on Axure, you can go to the Axure share link. Let me drop that in the YouTube chat. I don't have the LinkedIn chat in front of me right now, but it is number 9. So it's in the number 9, letter R, F for Frank, M for Mary, number 6, .axshare, AXSHARE.com, and that'll take you to the Axure file that we worked on today so that you can check it out. So that being said, tomorrow will be office hours, but a little bit earlier because I'm doing a live talk. So it'll be 5:30 p.m. Italy time. Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a show about publishing and writing courses and writing books, and do these make money, and what should you know about them? So if you've ever thought about publishing something, we're also going to talk about publishing contracts and where they can be sneaky and end up biting you in the butt. So anything you've wanted to know about publishing, pretty much anything, I'll be talking about my experiences. I made some slides and I'll be taking your questions. We also have, let's see, nothing on Thursday. I usually don't do shows on Thursdays. So let's see. What else? Friday, of course, is Critical Thinking Stream. So feel free to send in something for Critical Thinking Stream. Monday, another Think Out Loud. So don't forget to send something in, because now we have nothing to do on next week's show. Send something in for episode 12. Remember, we can do fake research planning or some design. Tuesday the 29th is office hours at regular time, and I will have changed clocks, so please be careful. Check when 6:30 p.m. Italy time is for you. And then, holy cats, all of a sudden we're in April. So that's what's coming up. I'm going to play us out of here, but thanks to everybody who joined in today. Great to see Sophie, Larry, Maya, Banana, I think you're new to me. Numer, you were here last week. Rebecca, your name looks new to me. Who else? Alessia, your name looks new to me. Mi sembri nuova. And let's see, Jatin, we know you. Melanie, we know you. And Mix Betty, we know you. So thanks to everybody for joining. Everybody, please stay safe and be healthy. And if you're coming to office hours, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are